y'all, and welcome. Hope everybody's doing well out there so far. As you can see, we got some severe weather to deal with today as we have a bimodal slight risk in effect over here by Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Kentucky, and even down here by Florida. There's also a marginal risk which surrounds that. There's also a marginal risk over here in Texas, Vermont, and New Hampshire. New York's included as well as Maine, and much of the central and western part of the country is dealing with some sort of severe weather. There's a marginal risk in effect for y'all too. Now, as far as the risks go today, there is a pretty significant chance for tornadoes down here in Florida, as there's a 5% chance for that. There's also a 2% chance which stretches all the way up into southern Indiana, and this also includes Nebraska and South Dakota. There's also a high wind threat over here within both slight risk zones, as there's a 15% chance for that, and there's a 5% chance within all the marginal risk zones today. There's also a large hail threat over here by Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia, as there's a 15% chance for that, and really a 5% chance within the majority of the marginal risk zones, except for over here in Vermont and New Hampshire. So be aware of large hail and high winds, and make sure you have a way to get alerted and know where to go when that tornado warning is issued, and don't be scared, but be prepared, as significant tornadoes can happen on low-end days, so be aware of this if you live within the 2% chance for tornado zones here in the green. As we push off into hump day, we have a low-end threat for severe weather, but a threat nonetheless. There's a marginal risk in effect from Iowa down into Texas and New Mexico, as well as Florida and the Carolinas. As far as threats go, there is a 2% chance for tornadoes just down here in Florida. There's a high wind threat within all the marginal risk zones, as well as large hail. So make sure, just like here on Tuesday, that you put up anything you don't want damage from hail or blowing around from high winds, as it's looking like that's going to be the main threat within all the zones. And make sure, if you live down in Florida, that you are hyper weather aware, know where to go when that tornado warning is issued, as significant tornadoes can happen on low end days, and don't be scared, but be prepared. As we push off into Thursday, we have another threat for severe weather, as there's a slight risk over here in Texas with a marginal risk which extends all the way up into Oklahoma and down by Louisiana. Now, we do not know what the main threats are just yet, but make sure you stay tuned to my X and Facebook pages, as I will keep y'all updated when the Storm Prediction Center issues those threats. There's also a threat on Friday for severe weather. There's a 15% chance from Louisiana up into Mississippi. Now, again, we don't know the main threats, but I will let y'all know on X and Facebook when the Storm Prediction Center issues those risks. So now that we know the risks for the next 4 days, let's go ahead and take a look at what kind of flooding we could be dealing with, as there could be some significant flooding for the next 3 days, as there is a slight risk down here in Florida today, and really much of the eastern part of the country is going to be getting in on some sort of flooding. Head off into hump day, there's another marginal risk for much of the central part of the country and down by Florida. And then on Thursday, there's a pretty big day for flooding. There's a moderate risk over from Texas on Louisiana and even Mississippi, with a slight risk surrounding that. Now, to take a look at how much rainfall y'all could be getting in on, let's take a look at the National Blend of Models. I'll take this all the way out into the 17th, as it's going to be raining like cats and dogs out there. Could be dealing with upwards of 2 to 4 inches, with locally higher amounts possible here within the moderate risk area. 1 to 3 within the marginal risk and slight risk zone. So be aware of this. If you live in a low-lying area, see a flooded roadway, turn around and do not drown. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the timing when you can expect the worst of severe weather for the next 4 days. And to take a look at this, we're going to have to take a look at the HRRR model, the highest resolution model you can go with. Now, first, we're going to focus on the slight risk zones. Now, there was a tornado watch that has been issued in central Florida. Of course, it's already expired. It was set to expire at 1 o'clock, but it actually expired early. If we head to right around 3 o'clock, we're going to be severe clear down in Florida, but the severe is going to start to ramp up within the slight risk area in Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. That's going to occur through the late evening into possibly the overnight hours, for diminishing by right around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And of course, can't forget about y'all in Texas and Vermont, New Hampshire, and out in the central and western part of the country. Looks like the worst of severe is going to be occurring through the late evening into overnight hours for y'all. So just be aware of this, as it's looking like damaging winds is going to be possible within all of the marginal risk zones, and hail is going to be possible within majority of the marginal risk zones. So just please be aware of this and put anything up you don't want damage from hail or blowing around from high winds, as we take a look at what the wind gusts could be looking like today. Now, it's looking like down in Florida, we could be dealing with upwards of right around 20 to 30 mile an hour winds possible with any of these storms today, as well as up here in Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama. You could be coming in on right around 20 to 30 with higher wind gusts possible. It looks like there could be some power outages today. Well, it's the same thing with all the marginal risk zones as well, so be aware of that. And as we take a look at the significant tornadic parameters, I hope I'm not making this video too boring for y'all, but the significant tornadic parameters shows us where the most favorable ingredients for tornadic activity could be at. Now, that don't mean a tornado is going to happen within that area. It just means the ingredients are favorable for tornadic activity. As we push this back to right around 1 o'clock, see, tornadic parameters are sort of diminishing down here in Florida, as that tornado threat starts to diminish as well, but the tornadic conditions are going to start to ramp up here in Georgia by right around 9 o'clock, so it's looking like a nighttime event's going to be possible, as well as up here in Nebraska and South Dakota. Nothing off the charts, but still, big tornadoes can happen on low-end days. So make sure, again, you're hyper weather aware and know where to go, and make sure you have all alerts turned on, as it's looking like a nighttime threat's going to be occurring, and don't be scared, but be prepared. Now to take a look at the hump day's timing, we're going to have to lower this down to the 12Z run. Keep in mind that all hazards are going to be possible within all the marginal risk zones except for tornadoes. The only tornado threat y'all got to worry about is down there by Florida. And as I push this to hump day, we can see that down here by Florida, I would expect the worst of severe weather to occur through the early morning hours before getting out by right around 3 o'clock. Over here in the Carolinas, I would expect this to occur through the late evening into overnight hours, as well as over here in the central part of the country before turning mainly into a flash flooding threat. So we take a look at the wind gusts. Now, all hazards are going to be low end. Still got to be aware of high winds, even if you're going to be dealing with low end threats, because power outages could still be likely. So we take a look at Florida first before we get into Carolinas and the central part of the country. Right around noon, I would expect right around 10 to 20 mile an hour winds. Then the Carolinas right around 6 o'clock. Really much the same story. Could be dealing with pretty high winds right around 30 mile an hour over here by Texas by around 7 o'clock. So again, next couple days, high winds, hail. It's going to be the primary threats. So make sure you put up anything you don't want blown around or damaged from large hail. And make sure you are hyper weather aware, as tornadoes are looking likely down here by Florida and much of the eastern half of the country today and tomorrow. Now, to take a look at the timing for the worst of severe weather on Thursday and on Friday, we're going to take a look at the Euro model for this to take a look at the lightning flash density rate. Now, this shows us where the most intense storms could fire up at. Now, keep in mind, anything over 12 hours is virtually impossible to forecast. As we push this to Thursday, it's looking like this could be a early afternoon into the late evening event. Now, this is obviously subject to changing. We don't know the main hazards for that, as well as on Friday, as Friday's looking to be an early morning into late afternoon event. Could be dealing with some severe weather by in the overnight hours as well. But again, we don't know the main hazards, and the timing is still subject to change. So make sure you follow my Facebook and X pages, so we'll keep you informed when the Storm Prediction Center issues those risks. And make sure that if you ever want to watch live storm chasers out there in the field, go follow Brandon Kopic, Vince Welty, Corey Gherkin, and Reed Timmer, as they do have the best storm chasing coverage out there. So make sure you go subscribe to those guys if you guys wouldn't mind. So now that we know the main risks for the next 4 days, and we know the timing, and we know that there's going to be a big old flooding threat as well, go ahead and take a look at what we could expect for the next couple of weeks. And to take a look at this, we're going to take a look at the simulated radar. Now keep in mind, anything over a week out is virtually impossible to forecast, so please take this with a grain of salt. We already know that we're going to be dealing with some flooding and severe weather for the next few days. And it's looking like we could be dealing with some very soggy conditions this weekend, so it looks like some weekend plans could be getting ruined if you live amongst the eastern half of the country. If you live out west and up here by Maine, it's looking like it could be a pretty nice weekend. Could be dealing with some snow up here in Canada, just north of Idaho. And it's looking like our next severe weather maker is going to be in store early next week over here in Nebraska and Iowa and Wisconsin. Now keep in mind, this is over 200 hours out. This is still subject to change, so definitely keep that in mind, and I will be keeping y'all informed if this does verifies it's looking like another severe weather maker is going to be in store. Now let's go and take a look at the Climate Prediction Center's 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook, as it's looking like really much of the country is going to be pretty soggy. Looking like above average precipitation is going to be expected for much of the country except for down here by Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. Alaska, you're going to be above average, and Hawaii, you're also going to be above average. Next 8 to 14 days, it's looking like much of the country is still going to remain soggy, while down here in Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico, you're going to be heading into a below average precipitation pattern. So this is good for those crops. If you have any crops you want to plant those. If you want to plant anything, now is a good time to plant. Looking like some well-needed rain is going to be in store for much of the country. Now, other than precipitation, let's go ahead and take a look at what kind of temperatures we could expect for the next couple of weeks. Now, we know we've been pretty chilly up here in the Northwest, which is really expected for this time of year. And it's looking like here on Tuesday, it's looking to be pretty warm up until tomorrow morning. Going to be a little bit chilly, but then it's going to warm up drastically again and cooling down, warming up, cooling down again. And then it's going to warm up drastically by Friday. Could be dealing with mid 80-degree temperatures as far north as Nebraska and South Dakota. Cooling down again, but then 90-degree temperatures are going to be stored this weekend over here in central Kansas. And it's going to be dry too, so get out in there and enjoy these nice hot temperatures. If you like the hot air, now's a good time to enjoy it. Make those weekend plans accordingly. And it's looking like it's going to remain the same for really much of the country. It's going to be cooling down a little bit as we head into the end of the month for much of the western half of the country. But still going to remain sort of warm for this time of year though. As we take a look at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook by the Climate Prediction Center, we can see that really much of the country is going to be above average except for out west. It's looking like down by California and Arizona, you're going to be below average, as well as up here from Northern California up into North Dakota. Below average temperatures are going to be expected up there, but no snow is expected, so that is good. But if you have any ski resorts near you, that go out and enjoy those, as we did get in on some snowfall last week. So go there and enjoy those. Hawaii is going to be below average. Looks like Alaska is going to be a little bit below average, except for Northern Alaska, where it's going to be a little bit above average. Hawaii is going to be above average. Next 8 to 14 days, remember me saying as we head towards the end of the month, we're going to be sort of cool amongst the western half of the country. Well, Climate Prediction Center is expecting some below average temperatures to be expected from Michigan all the way down into the central part of the country, down into California, so definitely prepare for that. Now, below average temperatures don't mean it's going to be cold, it just means a little bit cooler for this time of year. It can still be about 70 degrees, but still be cool for this time of year. It's looking like above average temperatures are going to be expected from Texas on over in the Carolinas though. So definitely a good time to plant. I wouldn't expect any frost if you live amongst the eastern half of the country. But if you live amongst the Northwest, I would still wait to plant anything, because after Memorial Day is when I would plant if you live up here in the Northwest. So now that we know it's going to be soggy and relatively warm for this time of year, for really much of the country, let's go ahead and take a look at the hurricane outlook. As we are approaching hurricane season, it's looking like we do have a 30% chance for hurricane development down here in the eastern Pacific. I wouldn't be too worried about this, but it's looking like hurricane season is going to be starting to get ramped up early, y'all. Hurricane season starts on June 1st, by the way. And I will have a hurricane outlook video up on Thursday, so make sure you're subscribed down below so you don't miss that. It's looking like hurricane season could be a pretty big one. So if you enjoyed today's forecast, make sure you hit that like and share button so more folks are informed about the weather. And also leave me some feedback in the comment section down below, as feedback helps provide you, the viewer, better and more informative content in the future. And also don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, with bell notifications turned on, so you never miss an upload, because here at Wins Weather, we try to make weather forecasting fun and informative. So I appreciate all y'all for watching. Have a great day, y'all. And until next time, never stop forecasting.